You're listening to the Access Success Podcast, produced by Access U, a division of Access Advertising and Public Relations. Hey, let's do something big. I'm your host, Rachel Schneider. Welcome to the Access Success Podcast, where we highlight important topics focused on education in every form it takes. Have you ever wondered why you keep seeing ads for the same companies on your phone? Maybe the same restaurants' advertisements are popping up on your feed, and you start to crave that burger, or a certain online institution's master's degree program is everywhere you look. Well, that's not always a coincidence. The way to get customer eyeballs these days is to meet them where they are, online. Here to talk more about digital ads and geotargeting are not just one, but two experts on the subject. Access U's Director of Digital Marketing, Lucas Weaver, and a friend of the agency making his podcast debut today, Chris Culbert, Data Specialist and Client Experience Manager with Amplified Digital. Welcome, you two. Thanks for being on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Excellent. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, Chris, since you are new to the show, can you kick off our conversation today telling us just a little bit more about what you do and what brought you into the digital marketing world?
Sure. Yeah. So I was in a regional sales role with another media company for 15 years, heavily on the print side with a little bit of digital. And then kind of as things started to evolve, digital started to play a much larger role, not only in advertising, but in everything that we do. So that led me to my role with Amplified. And I've been here for coming up on 2 years now. So I think from why I do what I do perspective, it's really something new every day. It's solving different problems for clients. It's working, with partners like yourselves, and being able to stay sharp on my skills, but also be able to, help impact local businesses, local communities, and do that directly through digital advertising.
And what is Amplified Digital able to accomplish for clients interested in building their presence and engagement with a specific audience? What are some of the most prominent tactics that you offer to get a brand's voice out there?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're a full service digital agency. The motto, kind of unspoken, is if you can think it, we can help you execute it. But from a tactical standpoint, really, it's anything from paid search, paid social, display, digital out of home, any sort of geotargeting. We have partnerships with Amazon, connected TV, streaming video. Kind of the list kind of goes on and on from a digital perspective. But yeah, those are some of the highlights.
Yeah. And so what would you say is the number one thing clients ask you for when it comes to how you can amplify their brand?
And we talk a lot about this, with clients in terms of what are my dollars doing for me? So, a lot of folks that have come from a more traditional, ad budget and ad spend and ad breakdown, it kind of blows their mind sometimes when you can kind of walk them down that path of, okay, you're spending X with this tactic, and here's your yield, here's what your clicks are, here's how these folks are then interacting on your website, and then here's what they're doing, and ultimately, when they convert, whether that's a purchase or a form fill or a phone call or an in-store visit or what have you. It makes that storytelling aspect of the business, and really showing clients kind of what's in it for them, and what's in it for their ad dollars. It helps to simplify that story.
And what are some general best practices when it comes to paid advertising online? How do you know which tactics to prioritize for a campaign or a brand?
At the end of the day, I think it's really about what the client is trying to accomplish. So whether it's if we're talking about education and they're looking for enrollment, that obviously is the main focus. So then it becomes and we talk a lot about kind of that full funnel approach of branding and awareness, then consideration, and then on down into when someone is going to convert and interact with your brand. And then, ultimately you want them to be a believer in your brand, and then they help you brand after they become, a student or a loyal customer or whatever that looks like. So, I think when we look at, kind of how each each tactic plays into that story and plays into that journey. It's really about what the client at the end of the day is trying to get done.
Yeah, Lucas, do you want to
Yeah.
jump in on that and talk more about how our team is able to work together with Chris and the experts on his team to really accomplish what a client is looking for?
Yeah, for sure. And I would just say too that, depending on the tactic and what the objective is that the client wants, that will kind of determine which tactics we go for. So, if it's more awareness based, maybe it's a new brand or a new program or something, and we're just trying to get the word out about it. We will take, targeted display, for example, which is probably one of the best tactics for awareness. So putting those digital ads out there on the web, in front of people where they're already like going to different pages, and they'll see those ads pop up there. And then, more for like consideration or engagement, we would maybe engage social ads, paid social, and then even PPC, of course, because they're already in that interest stage, already looking for your products or services. And so that's an easy way to trigger them. But yeah, our partnership with Amplify Digital it's a great one. We run a lot of different campaigns, and we're a small team here, so it's nice to be able to work together with their team to come together and get all of the campaigns sorted.
And how can you guys determine if a paid campaign has been successful? I mean, why might digital marketing be more important than traditional advertising in today's climate and just the way that people interact with each other now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Lucas.
I would say paid digital is incredibly important, mostly because, some of those traditional avenues and traditional media is not nearly as trackable as what digital is. If we're thinking billboard and outdoor, for example, you might have an estimate of how many people are going to see those on a daily basis, but data is on the web is far easier to track. We have those numbers rolling in every day. We can tell you exactly how many people have seen an ad, exactly how many clicks have happened, and depending on what your goal is and what conversions we've set up, how many people are converting, which I think is the bottom line usually.
Yeah, I think just to add to that a little bit, we obviously are, we both are purveyors of digital solutions and digital acumen and things like that. But at the end of the day, I joke with my wife that I'm in the data business, right? Like and it's everyone that's in the digital world is kind of in that data business of, whether, whether it's where I go online, what purchases I make, how many Amazon boxes my wife has show up at the house weekly. I mean, all that data is then, points in terms of like, what is Chris interested in? What is Chris's wife interested in? What does Lucas, buy online? What is Rachel, what content does Rachel consume? So then that kind of puts us all in these various buckets. So then, if I'm a client and I say, okay, I want to reach, somebody early 40s, likes sports, does X, Y, Z, and gives you a laundry list of things. It's like, oh, this is how we do that. This is how we accomplish that. And this is how we kind of cut that up. And then, to Lucas's point earlier, you can't really do that from a traditional standpoint, right? So it's, you can buy radio, you can buy newspaper, you can buy billboard, and, there can be generalities of how many eyeballs are going to see the billboard, how many people in what age range are going to listen to a radio ad. So not to take anything away from that, but digital really takes it a step farther in terms of how you can target those folks and really putting a laser focus on the intended audience, so you can eliminate a lot of potential ad budget waste for your clients.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I do want to back up for a second. So when you spoke about targeting just people in their 40s who are sports fans, what is that called for clients or for listeners who may be unfamiliar in that tactic? How and why is that so effective?
Yeah, so when we look at targeting, and depending on the platform, so a lot of display, you're going to be looking at advanced audience targeting or audience targeting. So age ranges, interest levels, kind of more on the, and Lucas and I joke and call it like the creepy data side of things.
Right. Because
like
it
what
gets
have you?
very specific. I mean, your
Yes.
insights that you can gain from it are amazing, but a lot of people, I think, don't want to think about what's behind the curtain of all the ads that they're seeing. And
Yep.
that's a
Yep.
lot of what you guys are able to accomplish and perform for clients and businesses out there.
Yeah. So then, on the going deeper, it's, where have you been? What have you purchased? Have you been to your local Home Depot? Have you purchased, what do you buy from Amazon? What do you look at from, you're a sports fan. Great. What team's content are you looking at? Like, are you into college football? Are you into Major League Baseball? So like it goes really, really deep in terms of a capabilities. Then, when you look at other platforms, it's more on the interest level. So kind of taking a lot of what we just talked about, but, Chris is interested in, you know, sports or, social activism or, community colleges or further education or, whatever. And then when you look at, something like Google, they obviously have all that search data. So they know what people are looking for. Then they have, anyone that has a Gmail account, all that data is harvested and used. And it's all fine and good. It's all, it's probably on page, Lucas and I joke, it's probably on page 98 of like the Google agreement, in, 6-point font or whatever it is, that they're going to use that information, but not necessarily sell it. But yeah, I mean, the targeting that's out there is wild, both from an audience standpoint as well as a geographic standpoint.
Yeah, and in trying to tell if that tactic is effective, what are some of the key performance indicators that you use? And Lucas, jump in on this also. What are some KPIs that you use to determine if a campaign was effective, if a certain ad reached the people that you were trying to reach?
Yeah, so I mean, again, it kind of depends on what the objective is and which platforms and tactics we're going for. But I'd say some of the big ones are probably, impressions, reach, clicks, click-through rate, conversions, and even like engagement rate. Again, it depends on the tactic of those. I think the ones that we probably focus the most on are those clicks and conversions and the click-through rate. I think industry best practice is to have benchmarks from an industry-wide level that we can kind of look back and refer to and say, okay, how does this current campaign that we're running for a community college or another business stack up against what other companies are running and other institutions are running? So that kind of gives us a base of where we are and how we're performing in terms of others in the field, and then we can go from there and make edits and changes as needed.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I think it really does go back to what are the client's objectives as a whole, and then you look at the KPIs based on those objectives. So from a brand standpoint, you look at things a little bit differently than if someone's going to look at more on the conversion side of things. So just keeping in mind of the end goal of what the client's trying to accomplish, I think will help tell the story and help keep everyone in line on what they need to be looking for per campaign.
And in that same vein, how do you know when to pivot or then change tactics or switch it up when things aren't working or switch up creative? If ad fatigue may be setting in and something's old and you need to switch it up.
Yeah, so I think with that, let's talk about ad fatigue first. So, and Lucas alluded to kind of industry standards and benchmarking and things like that, which we do a lot of. So anytime you see, things start to take a dip. So if we've been operating at a high level, in terms of like engagement and click through rate and things like that, if creative hasn't been changed out in, 30 to 60 days, let's start looking at what can that fresh creative be. And, it doesn't necessarily have to be built from the ground up. I mean, it can be something like, same taglines, same type messaging, but let's look at some different photos. Let's look at, some different, maybe some color palettes or different variations of things like that, just so that it stays fresh, with a potential client or with a potential customer of your client, so that it then doesn't become, I think that depending on who you follow from an advertising perspective, it's anywhere between 7 to 12 touches before, a brand will kind of sink in with, with someone. So if you're to that point, or if you've gone over that point, then it just kind of becomes, white noise. And it's like, oh, we're now spending dollars to get it back in front of Lucas. And Lucas has either decided that, he's going to interact with us or he's not going to interact with us by this point. So, that's really one of the things. And then I think from, pivoting out of tactics, we base a lot of our recommendations on, previous campaigns, current campaigns, but then there's a lot of both first and third party data as well. So, when we lay out a campaign initially, there are things, and Luke's and I have talked about this. I could be wrong in my recommendation, right? Like, I don't think it's going to be way off, but tactically we could be off. The targeting might be slightly off. I mean, there's a lot of variables that kind of play into that. So the nice thing with digital is that it's very easy to pivot out of. So it's not something where, you sign a deal and you're locked into this exact plan for the next 12 months. And, if it tanks, sorry, like that's just not how it goes. Like, it's very nimble. A lot of the changes on the backside can be done very quickly. So, if an objective changes, or if we're advertising for a specific class for a college or university, that class fills up, that's a great problem to have. But then you have to pivot out of advertising for that specific class, right? So it makes things very easy to change up on the fly.
So going off of that too, sorry, Lucas, go ahead.
No, you're good. Yeah, I was just going to say, like, if there is a situation like that, especially maybe where we've determined that one tactic might not be, as prevalent for this campaign that we have running right now, it's so easy to just take some of the funds from that and throw it in somewhere else, especially somewhere we know that is performing better. And to Chris's earlier point, it is about finding that sweet spot and, making sure that you haven't had the runs or ads running for too little or too long. And yeah.
And we've talked about how important it is to understand what the client's goal is. And we know that universities' social media accounts and their presence is going to have different digital marketing goals versus a clothing store, and different people that they may want to target depending on their target audience. So Lucas, maybe you could explain a bit of the importance behind, us from the PR side too, getting to know our clients, making sure we understand that brand and their audience before putting money behind ads. Because I know there's a lot of one-man band marketing teams out there that may be throwing money behind Google ads or Facebook ads and wondering what's wrong, what's happening.
Yeah, no, it's important to do that research and understand who your target audience is before you start, trying to put your messaging out and putting a lot of dollars behind that messaging. Because if you're sending all of those ads to the wrong people, then it's pointless. They're not going to engage with your content and convert, and you're not going to reach the goals that you're trying to reach. So, to that PR point in particular, I think it's important. That's what to do, like, the focus groups, to really get out there, talk to your audience, figure out what it is they like, what makes them jive, what their interests are. And then once you have that information, you can start building those campaigns. Okay, this audience is on these platforms at this time, or they're searching these things around, these days, for example, and then you can build a campaign that is targeting those people at the right time, with the right people and so forth. And then it becomes important.
Yeah, I think just one more thing to add on that, when we start looking at data, in specific industries, the third party data is normally very, very good directionally, right? So you can say, without a shadow of a doubt that for, we're talking about community colleges and education, things like that, parents of high school kids, you can look at them as a variable, and then there's a whole data set behind them. What the flip side of that is we can talk third party all day, but if XYZ University, if we can look at their first party data of the families that go there and of those students, I mean, that's always going to be the ticket in terms of, okay, here's how we look at their first party. Here's how we can help, build a persona of, traditional students, non-traditional students, things like that. And then how do those folks engage with media? Where are they? what are they looking for when they're online? How are they interacting online? And then we can make sure that we have, and this goes again, simple marketing principles from, the fact that I'm getting older and I've been in this for a long time, but it's never going to change in terms of right message, right person, right time. So that still resonates today. But then the data side of that just lets us do that a little bit better.
Yeah, and that first party data is always going to be the most valuable, to Chris's point. Third party data is great. It's better than nothing. You don't want to go into a campaign totally blind. But anytime that you can get that first party data, always go that route.
Yeah.
So again, a lot of insights being gained from this. How does working with the same client for a longer period of time and learning their audience then help you better understand how to serve their ads increasingly better? Because it seems like as the longer that you're able to run these ads, the more knowledge you gain about the audience. How do those insights then help you and help the rest of the team?
I think when you look at it from and we can look at, a community college as an example, a fall enrollment audience could look very different than a spring enrollment, or, probably even, a little bit farther away than a summer enrollment. So I think you're talking to different people. So you can, in your conversations with clients, you can hear them say that. And then, and we talked about first party data. So you can look at some of that first party data as well. But then as you continue down that path, the kind of the proof in the pudding is going to be, okay, if we made certain assumptions based on the data that we have at hand on an audience, if that audience isn't interacting, now, again, how do we pivot out of this, right? So, when we go into campaigns and we start these things out, we have those educated guesses in terms of tactic and how a budget should be cut up and things like that. But then to Lucas's point, if things aren't panning out as we thought they were going to, then it's okay. Maybe more money needs to go behind your social initiatives. Maybe it needs to go behind your PPC initiatives. So as you grow and as you continue to work with clients, it makes those conversations a lot easier to have, because, a lot of things that we do and that you all do with clients, it's still fairly new on the client side, right? Like, so, Mr. and Mrs. Advertiser, they may sell widgets. They may not know a ton about digital advertising. So that's where we come in to educate and to partner and to show them, be like, look, help us help you and help us, find your best customers.
Yeah, Lucas, anything to add when it comes to building and maintaining that relationship with the client and then being able to learn from the ads you put out and evolve over time with their brand?
Yeah, so I think, the longer that you're with a client, the more knowledge you'll glean about them and about their audience. And because certainly, like if we're running a campaign for a school that we've done, for several years, and we're about to gear up for the next fall campaign, and we've been running it for the past, let's say 2 to 3 years, we know usually by that point which tactics work the best for those students that are going to be enrolling for these fall classes. And so we can kind of take creative, rejudge it, refresh it, maybe have some new messaging and creative, but we know that, paid search or targeted display or social is going to work best for that audience, and go ahead and go down that route. And it kind of lets us streamline, not only the tactics that we're on, but how much money we're spending on that to get the return that the school is looking for. So I think it's obviously you want to know your client and know the audience. And I think just over time, it gets better. That relationship builds.
Right. Right. And so being that this is still something that is very new for a lot of clients and organizations, can either of you shout out some of the big misconceptions that people may have about online advertising and marketing, or geotargeting for that matter too?
Misconceptions.
Or I guess a frequently asked question that you get a lot from people who may not be as familiar with the industry.
Yeah. I mean, I think when, if you go misconceptions or rumors, or, is my voice activated device listening to me? Like, is my, like, how do these things possibly happen? We were just talking about that, and now I see an ad for it. What the
Sure.
heck's going on, right?
Mhm.
So, I can't unequivocally answer that and say yes or no that it is or isn't.
That's a little
But
spooky.
sure, but at the end of the day, I think it is all going back to um, it's a data thing.
Mhm.
It truly is a data thing. Whether that data is what I'm consuming online, what I'm purchasing online, where I go. And then you have folks who are like, well, I turn all my GPS off, and I'm cloaked, and I'm this, and I'm that. Well, I think that's good for the most part, but at the end of the day, if you've got a weather app on your phone, if you've got Facebook on your phone, if you've got really any app, when you download a new app and you get those pop-up questions of does this app have permission to do the following things, and most people are like, no. But the one that they don't really ask, it's a geo perspective. So when we talk like geotargeting and where folks have been, if somebody wants to target folks that are in Lane Stadium at a Tech game, you can do that because they're in Lane Stadium. If people want to say, hey, look, I want to target Tech fans, then we can say, okay, we know that this group of people over here has been on Tech's campus, has been in Lane Stadium. So then we can set up a separate audience for that. So it's really just all about the data. I think from a misconception, it's like, the data is used maliciously and this, that, and the other. At the end of the day, it really is. It's used so that Rachel sees ads that are meaningful and pertinent to Rachel. Same thing with Lucas. Same thing with Chris. Same thing with Mr. and Mrs. Smith that live down the block, right? Because we could all want and interact with different ad experiences. So then that falls on people like Lucas and people like myself to make sure that we can match, customer A to our client and they have a good experience.
Yeah, I mean, the more that you allow and actually turn on, the more relevant the ads will be and personalized to you.
Yeah.
So, and
100%.
then just from a misconception standpoint, the only thing really sometimes I'll have clients that just don't know, what's an impression or what's a click-through rate, and
Sure.
sometimes I'll just have to explain, what those are, and that's totally fine. It kind of goes back to that point that this is a newer realm for some organizations and institutions, and we want to be here and help them learn why this is an important tool that will help them.
Yeah, I think that so much of our lives and our information and our personal data lives online. As someone myself who has grown up with technology, and I remember when the iPhone was released, and I've had one for a very long time. I do mobile baking and I have those social media apps, and I am interacting with that data and putting my own out there in a myriad of ways, from hosting this right now to when I'm going to be online shopping later, I'm sure. So there are so many ways that we interact with the world now, and it's just making sure that marketing is meeting people where they are and that it's relevant to them. So great points for people listening and for clients who want to work with very educated, trained professionals like the both of you. We're so fortunate to have you on the show, and I feel like I've learned so much just sitting here and getting to soak in a lot of what you're saying. So thank you again for being on today, you two.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Before we go, would either of you like to shout out, since this is the Access Success Podcast, we do like to ask people to share a recent success story personally or professionally of theirs. Chris, I'll pass the mic to you. Is there anything that we can shout out for you, a success story?
Yeah, and it's actually with a client that we partner with you all on. It's ATDM out of Danville, and we've been fortunate enough to partner with you all and partner with them kind of from inception forward. So it's been really good to see them grow. When we talk about kind of on off, when they're advertising, when they're not, and I'm sure listeners are gonna be like, yeah, no kidding, guy. Like if you're not advertising, your traffic's gonna be lower than when you are. And Yes, touche. That is correct. However, when you kind of look at how much how exponentially those numbers have grown. So when you talk about new users, and when you can get in front of a client and say, we've helped grow your new user base month over month, 7-8x per month. When you look at conversions and enrollment growth, when you look at month over month performance against industry KPIs from a benchmark standpoint, some of those campaigns we're running we're 30 and 40% above education industry benchmark for those specific tactics. So it's very meaningful from where I sit in our partnership in terms of you all's trust in us, the client's trust in us as a collaboration, but then also knowing that we're helping them build something for the school, which with ATDM it's ultimately for defense and our country and things like that. So it's working with clients like that is very rewarding, and that's kind of what drives me and my team, and keeps us coming back and keeps us sharp and on our toes.
Amazing. Well, congratulations on that success. It's been great working with you guys.
Absolutely. We appreciate y'all's partnership.
Yeah. And Lucas, congratulations are in order for you as well. Tell us about your recent success.
Yeah, so I was recently promoted to the director of digital marketing here at Access U. So that's been super exciting, and I'm very grateful for the opportunities that I've been afforded here. And
well deserved,
that transition from thank you. Yeah, that transition from digital marketing specialist to director of digital marketing was one that I'm very proud of.
Yeah, we're so happy to have you on the team, and someone who is so in tune with all the latest things to know about digital marketing and advertising and tracking our clients' success as well. So very happy to have you with us, and congrats on that.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for being on the show today. And for those watching or listening, if you like this episode, let us know. Send us a message through our Facebook or our Instagram account, and we'll see you next week. Thanks. Bye. Thanks for listening to the Access Success Podcast, produced by Access U, a division of Access Advertising and Public Relations. Find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram to keep up with what the world of education needs to hear, at Access U Agency, and connect with us at accessu.com. Let's do something big.